If there is one poet who has best captured the sense of the irrational, the feminine, the silky strands that lie underneath and give shape to things, it is the Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca. Lorca was a member of Spain's famed generation of 1927, which included the painters Pablo Picasso, Joan Miró, and Salvador Dalí. Lorca's understanding of the things that bubble underneath the surface might be due to his connection with the feminine and the inner world. He descends into the unconscious and transforms what he finds there into glorious images that take you into the depths. His use of color to define life and death is masterful. Orange for life and green to denote death. Nobody eats oranges under the full moon. One must eat fruit that is green and cold. It was another poet, the Russian Osip Mandelstam, who said that if a poem can be paraphrased, then the sheets haven't been rumpled and poetry hasn't spent the night. Lorca's poems spend the night. They rumple the sheets and light the bed on fire. You can't read them without experiencing a descent into the underworld. It is like what was famously said of Richard Wagner's opera Tristan and Isolde. You are lucky to get out alive from a performance. Well, you're also lucky to get out alive once you've taken the time to dive into Lorca. Now, besides being a masterful poet, Lorca was also an insightful explorer of the human psyche in his plays. His examinations of the feminine psyche in particular are masterful. Yerma and the House of Bernarda Alba loom large as examples of these. For Lorca, it is all about frustrated desire, frustrated love. In Yerma, the protagonist kills her husband with her bare hands for failing to give her a child. In the House of Bernarda Alba, we watch as the sex-starved daughters of Bernarda project all their sexual frustration on the same man, Pepe el Romano. Lorca was a poet from Andalusia, the land of bullfights and cantajondo, and his interest in the gypsy roots of southern Spain enriched his work in many ways. I first discovered him through his poem, The Ballad of the Sleepwalker, with its haunting refrain, "Green, green, how I love you green." The poem tells the tale of a gypsy smuggler who is killed by the police before he can rejoin his mistress, and it is a dreamlike meditation which eludes all attempts to render it wholly intelligible. It is a dreamy walk through the land of the dead, where the road leads to the moon, and a young girl lies dead, waiting for her lover to arrive. Beyond Lorca's poetry and plays, there is a speech he gave in Buenos Aires, which is generally not known, but where he tries to define the nature of artistic inspiration in such passionate terms that it is as if he was seized by that spirit, a spirit he calls Duende, and torn into pieces as he spoke. The speech is called The Theory and Play of Duende, and I urge you to find it online and read it closely, though it may not be possible to read it slowly, as the words run away with themselves and you're left exhausted and shattered from attempting to keep up with them. In that speech, Lorca tips his hat to the spirit of Dionysus. What Euripides explores in the Bacchae, Lorca details here with powerful metaphors and florid language and such a passion that it is impossible for Apollo to enter the room and stop the madness even momentarily. All that has black sounds has duende. Lorca quotes Manuel Torres saying with approval and comments, "There is no greater truth. Those black sounds are the mystery, the roots fastened in the mire that we all know and all ignore, the mire that gives us the very substance of art." Duende, then, is a master of depth rather than height, of soulfulness rather than spirituality. The duende burns the blood like a poultice of broken glass. Lorca circles around the definition of duende, never able to adequately express it in words because it is impossible to grasp and define it. It's too messy, too unwieldy. If we are lucky, we will experience it, and if we are open, we will create something that transcends time and death, the death that always hovers over Lorca's work. In 1936, just as the Civil War broke out in Spain, Lorca's friends begged him not to return to his native Granada. Lorca dismissed their worries, arguing that no one murders poets. He was wrong. He was arrested by a right-wing group because of his left-wing views, because he was gay, because he stood for everything they could not tolerate in the world, and they shot him alongside a school teacher and 2 bullfighters. In his collection of poems, Poet in New York, Lorca writes, "When the pure shape sank under the twittering of daisies, I knew they had murdered me. They combed the cafes, graveyards, churches for me, pried open casks and cabinets, but they couldn't find me." Couldn't they? No, they couldn't find me. Lorca was buried in an unmarked grave. Despite a number of attempts to locate his final resting place, it has never been found.